Arizona's gubernatorial election is nearly 18 months away, and already the race has begun.
This is a long, hard road to be able to be elected governor of a state as big and diverse as Arizona.
But does an early start in primary hurt the candidates?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think we're going to come out stronger as a result of having a primary.
And do voters just get tired of it all?
If you want to be in the championship, you got to beat, 4 or 5 people before that, and every match you have makes you better for the last one.
Arizona's gubernatorial race, plus races for Congress and the U.S. Senate. This is Arizona Week. Welcome to Arizona Week. I'm Christopher Conover in for Lorraine Rivera. The gubernatorial election is in November of 2018, but already 3 Democrats are in the race. We begin tonight's show by meeting those candidates.
Well, seeing as I don't have a long political resume, it was important for me to get out in front of this, start getting my name out there, start building coalitions and trust with voters, with activists, with party leaders, and so that's why I'm out early, is to do the work that has to be done over the next year and a half to win.
Some would ask, especially given the 2 other Democrats who are in the race and the man who currently occupies the governor's seat, political resumes. You have no political resume. Why would you want to get into this race?
I think Arizonans, actually all Americans, but Arizonans in particular, are hungry for honesty and transparency. And they're very distrusting of the ability of politicians to give it to them. Not that I necessarily agree or disagree, but I have done a lot of things to show that I am and will continue to be honest and transparent as a politician. And I want to give people the opportunity to vote for that if that's something that they truly and deeply care about.
Primaries are a tough thing. You have right now 3 Democrats, counting yourself, in the race. Do you worry about running the danger of beating each other up so much that whichever 3 of you emerges to take on the governor a year from November, you're too wounded to take him on? Do you worry about that?
Not at all. I grew up in high school. I was a wrestler, and when you go to a wrestling tournament, if you want to be in the championship, you got to beat 4 or 5 people before that, and every match you have makes you better for the last one, and you've got to earn your way. And sure, you may be tired, you may be bruised, you may have some scars or whatever else, but that's the nature of the beast. And honestly, I think that all the candidates running as Democrats will support whoever actually wins the nomination, and it's our intention, at least my intention, to play clean and give people a run for their money without doing anything shady or otherwise incredibly taxing.
How do you set yourself apart in this race, be it in the Democratic primary or in the general election against a guy lots of people know, Governor Doug Ducey? How do you set yourself apart?
Well, one of the big things is my resume as an independent. I started my life as a Republican, then I spent 10 years as an independent, and now I'm a Democrat. And there are more independents in Arizona than there are people registered to either party, and they don't participate very much, partially because they don't feel like there are candidates who cater to that moderate demographic. And so, different than both Doug Ducey and other Democratic candidates, catering to independents and people who think moderately is something that's very, very important to me and separates me from them.
When you declared, I think you caught a little bit of heat. Some people may have put you more of a fringe candidate, saying, oh, you want to massage the feet of Arizona and sing songs to them. It doesn't sound like that's necessarily all of who you are.
Oh, no. I mean, I wrote a love letter to the state as a rhetorical device. I don't know if I would say a joke, but as a tool to communicate that I'm really about serving the state. And so I do not literally intend to make my campaign about songs and foot rubs. It's more about, in a relationship, you got to show that you care about people, and I intend to do that for the state of Arizona.
I decided to jump into the race when Governor Ducey signed the voucher bill, last week now. I, as a public school parent, simply felt betrayed. I felt betrayed that after Proposition 123, Step 4 was to push for universal vouchers. I'm a public school parent. I have 2 daughters that attend public schools here in the state. And as a parent, and by the way, 95% of our parents are in public or charter, traditional public or charter schools. I just felt like on behalf of them that our choice isn't being honored. I felt like our choice was being betrayed. And I'm a public school advocate, you know, that I have been heavily involved and worked as hard as I possibly can to improve our public schools. And the reality is that the best place to make that kind of change is running for governor.
It's still pretty early, though. I mean, we're a long way out. The legislature behind you is still hard at work on things like a budget. Do you worry about getting in too early, burning the people out?
No, I don't. There's a lot of energy out there right now. There's a lot of folks, because of the general election, because of what's happening down here at the legislature, who are looking for a place to get involved. I'm going to meetings where formerly there were 10 people, now there's 50, 60, 100 people. And I think those folks are looking for a place to get involved, and campaigns are a natural place for them to spend time and energy and get connected to issues that matter to them.
You're running against, right now, 2 other people in the Democratic primary. One, a political newcomer. The other, been in the legislature for a long time, community activist in Tucson. How do you distinguish yourself from the rest of that field? Because that's your first hurdle.
Look, I'm out there because I believe we can connect in a way that no other campaign can. We did that in our 2014 campaign, bringing people into our campaign, getting support from unlikely places. I think I'm uniquely positioned to do that. I'm a native Arizonan, product of public schools. I'm a vet. I spent time in the U.S. Infantry, and I think I've got a connection that's really going to communicate and connect with people.
What do you do? How do you prevent, with your other Democratic opponents too right now, that number may grow, that number may change one way or another, to not injure whoever comes out of the Democratic primary, so you have a strong candidate to go against what appears to be a strong incumbent?
I don't think that this is a situation where the candidates are going to injure each other. I think it's actually the opposite. I think we're going to come out stronger as a result of having a primary. You may not remember, but in 2014, I was the only Democratic statewide candidate that had a primary. It was a great opportunity for our team to learn, to get a little battle tested. We came out stronger as a result, and I believe that our campaign, if there is a primary, is going to come out just as strong this time around.
Right now we have 3 candidates, counting yourself, who have indicated or officially declared that they're going to go ahead and run for governor. Does that make it harder? You know, do you guys end up beating up each other too much to come in against an incumbent that's got, you know, big money behind him?
I think a primary is good for everybody. You can make the argument that Fred Duvall in part lost that race last time because nobody paid attention to him until after the primary because there was no opponent. If you have good people going all over the state talking about the problems that most of the state has been having with Doug Ducey and his policies, I think that helps everybody ultimately by making the case to the voters for a couple of years, not just a couple of months.
How do you, as a Democrat who's been around the Capitol for a while, been active in the Tucson community for more than a decade that I've been there, how do you distinguish yourself not from Doug Ducey, but from the other Democrats who are in the race at this point?
Well, I think once I'm elected governor, I will probably be the governor in recent memory with the most experience in the legislature, with legislative processes, and with most knowledge of actual legislators. That stuff is really important. I think the people of Arizona don't just want to elect somebody who says nice things and then flails trying to learn on the job. They want somebody who understands how this place works so we can undo some of the damage that these folks have done to the Citizens Initiative process, they've done to our schools. There's a lot we need to do as people in a state. And I think we want, the voters of Arizona want somebody who has a proven track record of being able to accomplish things.
So when do we go from potential run to actual run? When do you officially
Well, there's a lot
jump
going
in?
on around here that we need to keep an eye on. You know, this type of session tends to get slow, but that means that crazy stuff can happen at a moment's notice. So I'm keeping my eye on the legislative processes to try to protect the people of Arizona. And once that session is over, I'll be moving towards an announcement.
Is it too early to be running for governor of Arizona? We talked with Hank Stevenson from the Arizona Capital Times to handicap the race.
I think it's a little bit of all those things. It's a little bit early. It feels a little bit extra early because the legislature's still going. We're past the 100-day mark of the legislative session at this point. And I mean, the campaign feels like it just ended. Like, how long has President Trump been in office? Maybe, 3 months at this point, but it feels like it was just yesterday when he was sworn in.
Yeah, we're coming on to his 100-day mark in about another week. The big ticket, the top of the ticket next year will be governor. We now have 2 people officially in the race as Democrats. Everyone is assuming Governor Ducey is going to run again, and certainly Senator Steve Farley. It all signals point that he's going to run again. How much does all of that figure in to what we see going on or not going on in the legislature and the ability and the desire to get out and start campaigning?
Yeah, I think there's an ability or a desire from the entire legislature to get out and go start campaigning. But I think that really with the governor's race, the people you've seen jumping in, that's been more a reaction to the legislative session. David Garcia got in, was able to kind of attach himself to that news cycle of Ducey signing that big voucher bill and use that to host a rally here at the Capitol and declare his candidacy, which gives him an advantage over somebody like Steve Farley, who's been kind of in the weeds of the legislative session trying to get through this and hasn't officially declared that he's running for the governor's office, although he's clearly, signaled that he's going to once the legislative session ends.
Education is the big issue for David Garcia. Certainly Steve Farley talks about education. All the candidates, the Democrats, are talking about education. Is that, do you think, your experience going to carry them through the 2018, or are they going to have to come out and talk about some other issues when it comes to trying to defeat Doug Ducey?
I think it's wise of them to try to make this a referendum on education and on Ducey. Ducey barely got his Prop 123 across the finish line. That was a very, very close vote. And then comes back with his budget, his State of the State speech this year, which was all about education, steps 4 through 18. But all we've seen so far is, him proposing in his budget a 0.4% raise for teachers and him signing this voucher bill. So depending on kind of what happens in the budget negotiations, I know that lawmakers are pushing for a much higher raise for teachers, and that would make the governor look a little bit better on this issue. But Democrats are rightly kind of surveying the landscape and saying this could be the defining issue of the governor's race in 2018.
Arizona's been reliably Republican, reliably red. I think some people thought President Trump would have done better here than he did, but he did win. Governor Ducey obviously is a Republican. Does he have any vulnerability coming into 18?
That's a good question. Look, it's going to be a very uphill battle for Democrats, and conventional wisdom says they're not going to win, whoever emerges from the primary. I mean, David Garcia couldn't beat Diane Douglas in the last election. Steve Farley's never been elected to anything outside of Tucson. These are, not sure thing candidates for by any means. He's not that popular outside of Republican circles. He is wildly popular among Republicans, but I think he's getting kind of a growing reputation in the state as somebody who, as I think Farley was saying, kind of plays off hashtags, governs by press release, hasn't had that much to show for his time here in office. His main victory so far has been Prop 123, and that was, a very slight victory.
The gubernatorial race in 2018 will be the top of the ticket, but it's not the only high-profile race. We also will have races for U.S. Senate and Congress, and those races are also underway.
Congresswoman McSally promised to protect our health care.
Arizona's 2nd congressional district is considered one of the most competitive in the nation. Already, the attack ads targeting Congressional District 2 Republican incumbent Martha McSally have begun. In fact, this ad that began running a week ago is not the first. In November, Congresswoman McSally won her 2nd term by 13 points, a huge margin in the district that is split nearly equally in thirds between Republicans, Democrats, and independents. But the joy of victory didn't last long. During a February town hall meeting in retirement-friendly Green Valley, Arizona, Congresswoman McSally faced what so many other Republicans have faced this year, angry constituents. 3 Democrats have already filed to run. Billy Kovacs is a local businessman who says he doesn't want to be a career politician. He's founded Tucson area restaurants and is currently the operations manager at the historic Hotel Congress in downtown Tucson. Charlie Verdon is a Tucson businessman originally from southern Louisiana. He's hoping to bring transparency and respect of Congress back to Washington. William Foster has also filed the necessary paperwork to run against McSally. He doesn't have a website. And Jeff Lattis, who last ran for Congress in 2006, has indicated he may get into the race. Anyone challenging Congresswoman McSally will have a difficult race. She has strong support within the Republican Party and is a proven fundraiser. The other marquee race in Arizona will be Republican Senator Jeff Flake's first defense of his U.S. Senate seat. Senator Flake was vocally opposed to Donald Trump during last year's presidential campaign, and the day after the presidential election drew a Republican Party primary challenge from Kelly Ward. She's a doctor and former member of the state legislature who challenged John McCain during his 2016 re-election. Senator Flake has drawn the same raucous crowds at town hall meetings as other Republicans. Democrat Deidre Abboud has also filed to run against Senator Flake. She's a Phoenix attorney and community activist. There's also a movement to draft Mark Kelly as a Democratic candidate. He's repeatedly turned those moves away.
Democrats are the only ones in the race for governor right now. Of course, Doug Ducey, the current governor, is a Republican, so the Republican Party has an interest. For that, we turn to Jaime Molera, a Republican strategist. Here we are, it's April, and we're talking about the gubernatorial election. Of course, it's April of 2017. The election's not till November of 2018. Is it a little early to be having these discussions?
Well, it feels like it's early, but if you're a Democrat in Arizona that wants to challenge an incumbent governor like Doug Ducey, you need to get going early. You need to get going early to develop an organization, and you also have to get going early to raise money, first and foremost. That's what they're going to need in order to have any kind of a chance.
How much money is it going to take to challenge an incumbent like Doug Ducey in a state that is traditionally Republican?
I would think that in order to be credible, that they would have to have a minimum of $2 million. But if they're going to be successful, I think that's going to be more significant, probably around the $8 to $10 million. That's the kind of money it's going to take to unseat a Republican governor, an incumbent.
When we talk about those kinds of dollars, those are pretty big dollars. It is a statewide race. Again, it's a Republican state. How hard is it going to be for a Democrat, be it Steve Farley, who is well known here at the Capitol, well known in Tucson, maybe not so well known in other parts of the state, David Garcia, who ran a statewide campaign the last cycle around for superintendent of public instruction, and Noah Dyer, who really no one's ever heard of. How hard is it going to be for these three gentlemen to raise that kind of money?
It's going to be a Herculean task, to be candid. In an off-year election cycle, meaning that it's not part of a presidential election year where you have a lot higher just general turnout, these election cycles tend to be more Republican because Republicans come out more frequently. At least all the data has shown, and history shows that's the case. So they need to double their efforts as far as bringing in the amount of money. A similar circumstance, and it wasn't an incumbent, was Janet Napolitano. When Janet Napolitano, she was very well known. She was the only Democrat. She had a lot of benefactors, but she raised quite a bit of money, and she barely won. And that's the kind of effort it's going to take in order for them to be successful.
At this point, and we are a long way from Election Day, but as you look at it, even as a Republican strategist, and maybe you don't want to give away too much, but is Doug Ducey vulnerable, or is this just three Democrats who are in the race and being hopeful?
John Kyle always said there's two ways to run an election, unopposed and scared. And so any incumbent is always vulnerable, doesn't matter who they are. But in a state like Arizona, again, with the Republican advantage and with Ducey, whose popularity is actually pretty good, he's very strong with the business community, he's known to be a very good campaigner, and most importantly for Republicans, he can raise a lot of money. That's what makes it difficult, is that everything has to fall into place. They have to get a straight flush, if you will, if they're going to be successful. So they have to do everything perfectly, and they got to hope that in some way, shape, or form, the governor stumbles at some point.
When it comes to primaries, do these three, maybe the number will grow, do these three Democrats run the risk of beating each other up too much during the primary that they come out so wounded into the general that Doug Ducey just sails to an easy victory?
That's absolutely the case. Me personally, I think out of all the Democrats in the field right now, I think David Garcia seems to be the strongest, just because he ran for statewide office before. He was generally well liked by the business community, and they actually got him within a hair of beating Diane Douglas in a year that, again, it was bad for Democrats, but that was because he appealed to the business groups. And so you want to take that person that can have that kind of a crossover appeal, and to me that seems like it could be a big benefactor for the Democrat Party. But having those multiple challengers, it makes it more difficult.
When it comes to issues, we're standing here on the lawn of the state capitol. The legislature is still in. Education has been one of the big issues this year and the past few years. Is that going to be the big issue of the campaign, or do you see something else lurking out there? Granted, we're talking almost 18 months away, that could pop up and change the whole landscape.
Education is always an important issue. I think even 18 months from now, I'm going to make the bold prediction that education is going to be a very hot topic. But I think some of the controversial issues that we dealt with in this legislative session in 2017, you had the empowerment scholarship accounts, the so-called vouchers. You're not going to hear a word about those next election cycle. I think the governor is going to be focused on getting more money into the traditional K-12 system. They're going to focus on accountability. And so they're going to steer clear of a lot of those things that I think might be of detriment to him in an election cycle.
Midterm election nationally also. We have a race for U.S. Senate. We have congressional races. Those are getting going now also. Is it too early for them, or same rationale?
Same exact rationale. I think the U.S. Senate seat that's open, the incumbent Jeff Flake, is going to get challenged in the primary. People are waiting to see if there's going to be a tougher challenger. I think by all accounts, most people think that Kelly Ward, she'll run the same kind of a race against Senator Flake that she did against Senator McCain. And again, people think Senator Flake can be successful because he can raise money and he's a good campaigner. And I think by and large, he's tighter with Republicans than quite frankly, McCain was. But it's the same dynamic. Democrats are going to have to find a good candidate, and they're going to have to raise quite a bit of money to be successful.
There's also been some noise from the national pundits that this midterm could be difficult for Republicans in general because of the popularity and unpopularity of President Trump. And again, looking forward 18 months, we have no idea what's going to happen in 18 months. Does that play into the gubernatorial election here in any way?
Well, it could, absolutely it could. There's always that national factor, and this Trump factor, I tell you, it's turned a lot of things on its head. So yes, of course, that could be a dynamic that nobody can factor in right now or guesstimate how it's going to work. But if you look at the past, and past is prologue a lot of times in politics, the voter turnout rates in Arizona, if you look at incumbency and the power of incumbency and the amount of resources that it takes to beat an incumbent, all of those factors make it difficult for Democrats. Now, it's not impossible by no stretch of the imagination. It's just the odds of them being successful are much higher for those reasons.
Here at the state capitol, education is one of the big topics of this legislative session. We now return to our conversation with Hank Stevenson from the Arizona Capital-Times to talk about the closing weeks of this legislative session. Let me switch gears. We're here at the Capitol, so we might as well talk about what's going on inside, or what isn't going on inside. You mentioned we just passed the 100-day mark. That's traditionally when they're supposed to be finished. Doesn't actually happen that traditionally. Where are we in the session? They are winding things up. As you said, today they were recognizing in the House interns and pages, which is usually a sign that we're almost finished.
Yeah, the internship program has almost ended for the year, so if we don't get the budget out soon, nobody's going to be there to write it. But yeah, I think that there's a push right now going on to basically overcome the major hurdle in the budget, which is Governor Ducey proposed a formula for universities to bond and get maybe $1 billion more that they can use for research and development, fixing up their university campuses. That has been a major hurdle for the legislature. The method by which this mechanism is put in place, it allows universities to recapture their sales tax and use that as a bonding or a revenue stream to bond against. It's all very complicated, but the idea is not very popular among Republican lawmakers, and even Democrats don't like it because it would take money away from the cities. The governor has signaled so far that he's not really willing to budge on that proposal, and that's been the major holdup since day one of the legislative session. And as far as we're hearing at this point, and this could change by tomorrow afternoon, there is no solution. They haven't come to a compromise. They haven't figured out how to get the votes on that plan, or what other plan they could offer that the governor would go for.
How deep a divide is this? The universities have long complained about what they call deferred maintenance, having to put off fixing up their buildings and things like that. How deep a divide is this? It's almost 90 degrees, maybe 90 degrees right now while we're standing here. Are you and I going to be standing here when it's over 100 still having this conversation?
I think most people are still remaining optimistic that we'll be out of here by May or in early May. If it's June, we have a serious problem. So I think lawmakers are motivated to get out of here. The governor is motivated to get something done. And it's just a matter of, can they find that compromise on that big issue and a couple of other smaller ones.
We've seen school vouchers go through. We've seen some citizen initiative changes go through. Is there anything big other than the budget left for the two chambers to get through?
That's hard to say because you can never really tell what ideas might resurface at the last moment of the legislative session. But really, as far as we can see now, no, there's not that much left to do. The House and Senate have been kind of slow walking bills out of the chamber, putting a handful up for a vote every week just to keep people busy, essentially. But it seems like the major controversial issues, at least the vast majority of them, have kind of already been passed through the legislature. And now we're waiting on the budget and whatever they decide to do at the last minute.
So the governor doesn't get the traditional threat of, I'm not signing any more bills until you give me a budget, because there's really not that much left to hold.
Yeah, and it was weird. Earlier in the year, there were kind of some rumors that he had put out a bill signing moratorium threatening to veto any bills that came to his office. As far as I can tell, there were some kind of negotiations. Tempers were tamped down a little bit, and they kept sending him bills with the understanding that, look, we're working on the budget, you're working on the budget, we're all negotiating in good faith. Let's get what we can done in the meantime.
And that's our program for this week. I'm Christopher Conover in for Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for watching.